On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1983. We're going to be taking a look at the Everly Brothers, and they're going to be performing Wake Up Little Susie. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. First of all, thank you for all of the messages requesting this video tonight following the sad news that Don Everly passed away last week. We're going to take a look at Don and Phil performing back in 1983, and they've got their guitars out. I do have another video on the Everly Brothers where I get into their history as well, but today we're just going to be breaking down a little bit about the singing, which I did a lot of in that previous video, but we're going to be looking at the guitar playing as well because they were instrumentalists. They could accompany themselves. So let's get the guys up on screen and see how they get on.
Sound asleep. Wake up, little Susie, and weep. The movie's over, it's 4 o'clock, and we're in trouble deep. Wake up, little Susie. Wake up, little Susie. Well, what we gonna tell your mama? What we gonna tell your papa? What we gonna tell our friends when they say, ooh la la, wake up, little Susie. Wake up, little Susie. Well, I told her mama that you'd be in by 10. Oh, Susie, baby, looks like we goofed again. Wake up, little Susie. Wake up, little Susie. We gotta go home. Wake up, little Susie. Wake up. Wake up, little Susie. Wake up. Wasn't so hot, it didn't have much of a plot. We fell asleep, our nooses cooked, our reputation shot. Wake up, little Susie. Wake up, little Susie. Well, what we gonna tell your mama? What we gonna tell your papa? What we gonna tell our friends when they say, ooh la la, wake up, little Susie. Wake up, little Susie. Wake up, little Susie.
And there we have it. What I love about this performance, but just the Everly Brothers in general, the way that they sounded when they sang together, they are perfectly matched. And when I say that, what I mean is the phrasing, every single word, even when it's more of an expression rather than a word or just saying, yeah, they will match each other with that yeah perfectly. And when we're talking about being on pitch, obviously they are dead on pitch the whole time, but what is so impressive is the way that they match all of their consonants and vowels, so that when you say a word, all of those consonants stick out, because vowels are a little bit smoother sounding, but if the T's and the S's are in different places between singers, then you hear the T twice, because it happened with one singer and then it happened a fraction of a second later from the other singer. So it starts to sound a little bit messy. It's not quite synced up correctly. Whereas the Everly Brothers, the only way to really describe it is that it sounded like one voice because of how matched they were with their expression, with the pitch, the delivery of the vocal, but most importantly, in terms of synchronizing their voices, getting their consonants and their vowels just perfectly flowing together so they happened at exactly the same time. And we're talking about spot on timing here. Like I just said, if you're milliseconds out, you hear a T twice and it just doesn't sound as good as these guys could sound live. What you heard was what you got. And what I mean by that is, when you watch them live in videos like this, it sounds like a record because it is so well executed, and they would just go in the studio and give you this kind of performance and then just reproduce it live with that consistency and that synchronicity between their voices, which is such a rare thing to have it at this kind of level. You'll always hear a little bit of a mismatch between a backing vocal and a lead vocal, and we are used to hearing that, but when you hear it this tight between two fantastic vocalists that are just almost like in the pocket with each other. When we talk about drums and bass and the rhythm section being in the pocket and just supplying such a rock steady groove, you could say that about Don and Phil. They were locked into each other vocally. I know that I did speak a lot about their voices in that previous video, which I'll leave a link to at the end of this video. Another thing that I want to mention is this song and the fact that it was their first #1 hit. And just the nature of the song, believe it or not, it was banned from Boston radio stations for being suggestive with its lyrical content. And all it's about is going to watch a movie with a girl and then falling asleep till 4 in the morning so that they didn't get home until that time, and then they're just thinking what their parents might think about what they were up to until 4 a.m. in the morning, but they just fell asleep during a movie because the movie didn't have a plot and it is very boring. So that's the lyrical content, but it really does give you an idea of the times. The fact that this was seen as too suggestive for Boston radio stations. Just to throw in there, if you do want to get an even deeper appreciation of the synchronicity that these guys had singing together, check out Let It Be Me from the same performance, because that's a lot slower tempo-wise, and the slower a song is, the more difficult it is to match up consonants, vowels, and just words in general, but of course they just nail that as well. So check that out if you do get a chance. Just to mention that this song, Wake Up Little Susie, was written by Boudleaux and Felice Bryant, and like I've already said, it was their first big hit, the first #1 hit. So we are going to be jumping into the guitar, because this is something that might fly under the radar, especially when people would have been listening to these guys on a record. They might not have known that they're playing guitar, they've got the ability to play guitar, and it's not really basic stuff. We've got bar chords going on here, the thumb being played over the top. Interestingly, this being written by Boudleaux and Felice, you get that country vibe to it with the bass line that just alternates. So we are starting in D, and I'll play the video a little bit so we can see Don's technique. So we're starting out with these downstrokes, and we've got this all downstrokes, just double timing it rather than going into the full strumming, which he does afterwards. And we're moving from our F to the G, back down to the F, like that. So we have... And then he changes to that full cycle and just down and up strokes with that right hand, which is a lot easier to get the speed in there, because you can make use of those upstrokes rather than having to put in that double time, effectively downstrokes that you would be doing. But it's just so solidly played, and you can tell that these guys were accomplished players because they have this approach to playing where it's subconscious, and you can tell they're not really thinking about their playing while they're singing, and it's just all going on in the background. And considering as well that we do get the thumb over the top on some of these chords, that is something that takes a little while to get used to. We're not in this first finger all the way across the guitar, not in that kind of formation. So they have a lot of technique on that fretboard, but like I said, it will fly under the radar. So let's just roll on the video a little bit and just listen to a few more of the chords. So when we get into this verse, we've got this little alternating bass line, like I said, and it's going from that D down to the A. So we kind of get this even though the Everly Brothers here aren't picking out those notes, that's being played by the bass. So you can listen out for those, and when we're playing through that riff, we've got 3 guitars here. At least there might be 4 guitars here. So it means that we get a variation in the chords that are being played just in terms of the voicings, or at least where they're focusing their strumming with those chords, because you'll see that we get a little bit more of a simplified shape from Dom when he's playing through. You can see he's very much just going from that D string, just emphasizing that part of the chord rather than emphasizing the lower strings. So it means that when you add these guitars together, it means that you'll get a lot fuller sound, because one guitar is focusing on the higher part of the chord, another guitar is focusing on the lower part of the chord, and we have a lead guitar in there, and it's going to sound a little bit more twangy, a little bit more up front as well, because we have this and single notes and a little pinch there, and it's going to be obviously easier to pinch on an electric guitar, but with that D, B, we get that kind of sound. And because we've got the other 3 guitars playing the rhythm, it means that we don't hear that really upfront rhythm from the lead guitar. The lead guitar just pops in, and even a little bit of that muting and keeping it in the background and going, even that kind of thing, resting on the string, but still applying a little bit of that D sound, the open D string in there. Just so it pops out. I'll take it back and we'll have a little listen. Try and hear that lead guitar just popping out. Did you hear it there? I'll take it back a little bit more, but you can only hear that. Just those notes popping out. If the lead guitar was playing the chords as well, they would be the same volume as that. So it would just be dominated by that lead guitar sound, which you don't want. But let's just jump into it again.
Wake up, little Susie, wake up. Wake up, little Susie, wake up. We've both been sound asleep. Wake up, little Susie, and we weep. The movie.
So here we just have a changeover to a G, and it's still got that kind of vibe to it with that alternating bass line right there at the end. We're going to be shifting up to an A.
It's over, it's 4 o'clock and we're in trouble deep. Wake up, little Susie. Wake up, little Susie.
And we've got this again, like that. So from that A, I'm moving from that low E string to the A string. And same principle there, from that low E string to the A. And you don't want to be too strict with this because the bass is playing it, and you could just be playing it like Don and Phil here and not alternating, just playing the chords. But just maintaining that rhythm, the same feel as if you were alternating. Kind of like that.
Well, what we gonna tell your mama? What we gonna tell your papa?
Okay, really cool line there. So we have this little bit of blues scale there. Again, from that lead guitar, it just pops in so that it stands out and just takes your attention for that split second, and then we get back into the lead vocal. By the way, that's going to be, we're in our A position here, but that was a little bit of minor pentatonic and blues scale. And there's also a bend in there. And again, the same little blues scale rundown, resolving to the A. But you'll hear these little lines coming in and just being thrown in between the vocal. It's such a cool sound. And like I said, it piques your interest, but then it just disappears by the time that the vocal comes in.
What we're gonna tell our friends when they say, ooh la la, wake up a little Susie, wake up a little Susie.
So there was D, A, D. So that, again, I'm alternating between the D string, A, and when I move to the A, E, back into the D. Kind of like that. Oh, and a little run up on that A string if you want to, 2nd fret, 4th fret. And then we're back into the verse.
Wake up, little Susie. Wake up, little Susie. We gotta go home. Wake up, little Susie. Wake up. Wake up, little Susie. Wake up. The movie wasn't so hot. It didn't have much of a plot. We fell asleep on Lucy's cooked our reputation shot. Wake up, little Susie. Wake up, little Susie.
And just to highlight something about the playing here, you'll see the way that Don has his hand down at the bottom of the guitar. So it means that he's playing his A chord here, like that, and the G here. Kind of like that. And when you look over at Phil, he's got his hand in that A position. It's something that I've mentioned in a lot of other analysis videos about when you're watching a great band. Generally, you won't see multiple guitarists playing the same chord in the same place. They'll split up their shapes in order to, for example, the A here, that high E string is going to be different when you move it higher up the fretboard. At that 5th fret, playing your A here and your A here. Hopefully you can hear the difference between those two, because on the 5th fret we get the octave of the A up at the top, whereas it's just an E down at the bottom. So you're splitting up the chords in order to get a fuller sound, but to get a different sound from both of the chords. And I just wanted to point that out while we've got this shot of Don and Phil playing their guitars, playing the same chord, but in different places.
Well, what we're gonna tell you, Mom? What we're gonna tell you, Pal? What we're gonna tell our friends when they say, ooh la la, wake up a little Susie. Wake up a little Susie. Wake up a little Susie.
And there we have it. I mean, we've pretty much watched it all again, but certainly no complaints from me about doing that. With this guitar playing and the rhythm, a lot of great rhythm playing is in the right hand, and it's something that does get overlooked all the time. And you can tell here that Don and Phil have got such a relaxed approach to that right hand, and that's something that comes with a lot of practice, a lot of time, in order to keep it really loose and just let that rhythm take care of itself. And it certainly does throughout this performance. When you've got guys like this, just classic kind of rock and roll approach of the late 50s. 1957, by the way, is when this was released and was a huge hit. But it's that classic rock and roll approach of singing and playing the guitar. And this has got a little bit of that country element in there, like I said before, but you still need the ability to be able to play this, put the rhythm in there, get the right groove and feel, and then supply the vocal over the top. And that is certainly what Don and Phil were just relentless with their quality live. Whenever you saw these guys perform, it was just top level singing, top level playing with just the sound of the record. I know that throughout their career, they did go through difficult times together. Certainly Don said about the fact that when you are performing with somebody else so closely and you're spending every single second of every day with them, and when you're on tour, you're performing with the other person literally feet away from you, and if you have a disagreement, it can make the performances a lot more difficult because you have to do the performances. You can't just quit and say, oh, I'm not doing it. But I know that they did have their times away from each other and falling out, but I think that's something that is to be expected when you're as popular as the Everly Brothers were and were in such demand. It meant that they had to spend so much time together that it wasn't always plain sailing, but certainly you wouldn't notice that when they're performing on stage because of the level of quality that they could just load up, and they were just so consistent. But thank you guys for requesting this video for tonight. I hope you did enjoy it, and I'll see you guys at the next one.